All right, now welcome back. Good friend of the podcast, Clayton Young, fresh with some big news heading into spring marathon season. Big switch. This is going to be one that shakes up, I think, the talk and the lead up to Boston. Clayton, I'll leave it to you. Why don't you share the news with the listeners? What's the big change in
Yeah.
2026 for you?
Big change 2026, new chapter in the book. I am proud to be a Brooks athlete at the Boston Marathon.
Wow.
Yeah.
When the news hit my inbox and we were arranging this interview, I was like, okay, that's something different. Didn't see this one coming, and part of this is also, we've had you on the podcast before, and you've discussed sort of like what it's been like to represent yourself. Like you are your own agent, and that was a big change in 2025 for you. So this must have been pretty intensive for you to take on your own footwear, apparel, sponsorship negotiation. What was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, this has kind of been in the works for a long, long time. To be honest, this negotiation, I know that I knew that my contract was with ASICS was going to be ending at the end of 2025, and so yeah, early 2024 when I decided to represent myself, like I knew that this would be a big one, and it's honestly it's been tough. Like this, there's a reason that we're doing this announcement in the middle of March. It's not perfect, it's not pretty, and that's part of the sport. It's like it's business at the end of the day. Um, but at the same time, it's been a really, really cool process to get to know so many brands and people in the sport. I was able to reach out to a lot of different director of sports marketing and go on different trips and get to know different shoes and people and develop relationships that I know will be valuable for me as an athlete for the rest of my career, but also after this career. I'm really grateful for all the great conversations I was able to have with those people. And but yeah, it was tough. I'm not gonna lie, and I'll always be grateful for ASICS and the first 7 years of my pro career that I had with them and their support. But I'm really really excited for the new chapter with Brooks, and yeah, I'm excited to kind of share that story of why I'm so excited.
Yeah, so why Brooks?
Yeah, why Brooks? Yeah, I think when I first hopped on the phone with Brooks, I was dealing with Garrett Heath, and if anybody knows Garrett Heath has been in the sport for a long time. He's an athlete himself. He ran for Brooks for a long time, and it was really at first great to get to know him simply because he was an athlete, right? And he understood me to a very very deep degree, and he's also really good friends with Jared Ward, and so um, I have this really great respect for Jared Ward, and Jared Ward always spoke really highly of Garrett Heath. So it was first great to get to know Garrett, but then he was able to kind of paint this picture of what Brooks could be. And I had to be really patient. Like he listened to me. He understood me not only as an athlete, but as a dad and as an engineer and as a creator and all these things. And I had to be really patient. But then he put a contract in front of me that was very personal and very Clayton specific, and I really appreciated that. And as I was going through this negotiating process, he took me out to Seattle, and so he brought Ashley and I. If anybody knows me, you know that Ashley is a big part of who I am and my decision making process and my performance as an athlete. And so they brought both Ashley and I out there, and my biggest concern right off the bat as I was talking with Garrett Heath was footwear, right? Like performance is my purpose as an athlete and performing at the highest level. And so I knew that, I'd been in ASICS for the last 7 years, but I had no idea what performance was like with any other brand. And so one of the first things I did is I got my hands on a pair of prototype Hyperion Elite Sixes, and I did some testing with them. And I got in the lab actually here even before I left to Seattle, and I got in their shoes and did some testing in the lab, and then with Stride, and kind of did a blind study of like how good are these shoes? Like, can they compete at the highest level that I'm used to? And like, can they perform even better? And I will tell you that the data came back really positive, and I was really excited about that. And the other part that was really cool about it is, as you guys know, and I'm sure we'll dive into this, but I was coming off an injury. I'd been injured for 18 weeks, and so even testing in super shoes was kind of precarious at that time. I'd gotten injured in super shoes, and so could I do an actual study and test in super shoes? And one thing I found with the Hyperion Elite 6 is just how stable the shoe was for my ankle and how good my ankle felt in the shoe. And so that was kind of like, okay, prototype is one thing, but can we see what the rest of Brooks can do? And so, like I said, we flew out to Seattle, and the very first meeting I had of the day was with their executive leadership team. And so I got to meet with them and kind of catch the vision of what Brooks was. And I was grateful that I got to meet them. Like, it's not every day that you get to meet the executive team of a big company and understand why they value you and why you should value them. But then the very next meeting, as they knew that like performance was my focus, was the performance footwear team. And so I walked into their lab essentially, and on the table they have just a pile of shoes, just so many shoes, and they're just handing me one after the other,
What
and
are you wearing into that meeting? Are you wearing like a pair of loafers? Like, do you have to go into these brand meetings as an unattached free agent?
yeah, you
You
kind of got to
weren't
go a
wearing
little.
ASICS to the Brooks HQ.
No, no way. I had to go a little incognito, and after being with a brand for 7 years, like your closet is chock full of only one
One brand.
brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I have some Olympic gear, but I can't wear Nike either, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, what do I wear? But I've got honestly a handful of few select things that I could wear, and but yeah, it was kind of funny walking in there. But yeah, they then presented to me what was, you know, the Hyperion Elite Six, and then what's down the pipeline, and what they're working towards and what they're developing, not from even from a footwear standpoint, but how to support their athletes on a performance level, and how they're doubling down on budgets from an R&D standpoint, and how they're essentially painting this picture all the way to LA 2028. And right then I was like, wow, this is a brand that not only listens to their athletes, like, right? My biggest concern from day one with Garrett Heath was, footwear, right? Like, he knows I'm a nerd. He knows I love shoes. He's like, okay, well, the first meeting of the day beyond the executive leadership team is going to be with the performance footwear team. And then from there, it just kind of cascaded, right? I met with the marketing team, and, because they know I love to represent myself as an agent, but as an athlete, as a creator, they showed me how they could support me as an athlete and a creator. And that was really special about how they would build my brand, essentially. And then I think the two other things that I would say that I really love about Brooks is kind of how community driven they are. Like, it seems like at all these world major marathons, they have a big community presence. They have their Hyperion houses. They're also really keen on this idea of investing in the athletes in their communities, right? You hear these stories about all the Brooks Beast athletes and the kind of community events that they get to do with their hometowns, and where they went to high school and where they grew up. But the last thing that was like really cool is I got to hear about, obviously they now have Brooks XC, right? So they're not only investing in the top athletes in the world, but they're also investing in the next generation. And I think more and more about how fulfilling that has been for me, as a pro athlete, to kind of give back and to kind of inspire the next generation, whether that's through YouTube or speaking gigs. But that's something that's really cool to be a part of. And yeah, it was a really cool experience to meet all the personnel there and to get to know them and to kind of catch the vision. And yeah, yeah, of course, like this is a 3-4 year deal, so I'm putting my Olympic dreams in their hands, and that's a little daunting. It's a little scary, especially because I know what I love, right? I loved ASICS for 7 years, and that was a great chapter. But now I'm putting this Olympic dream into a new chapter, and honestly, I'm just excited for what the future holds with Brooks and as an athlete, and honestly beyond, even beyond being an athlete.
Yeah, specific to you and that attachment to the performance side of things, making a change like this always a big risk when for 7 years you've only known ASICS, and you knew what Metaspeed, Sky or Edge worked for you and what you wanted. You could see also from the podiums at some of these marathons around the world that like ASICS athletes were showing up. And I always sort of think about when athletes are making these switches from one brand to the next, for a handful, it could probably be enough to just see those results from other athletes to be like, oh, that person is winning a bunch of races in that brand. That's going to work for me. But for you to take the shoes and do your own sort of testing, like maybe it wasn't enough to just see like Casey Klinger ran really well in Tokyo and that was a 2:08. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to run 2:06 or 2:05 in those shoes. What were you looking for in sort of your own data-driven, testing that you wanted to see in the product that gave you the confidence to make the switch?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. I will say that watching Casey run 59 minutes and a half, third fastest American ever at Houston, like in the Hyperion Elite Sixes, the protos, it was like, oh, okay. Like that was really validating alongside my data, as well as him running 2:08 in Tokyo. And yeah, the data that I was looking for, the two main factors that we look for when we do lab testing are your VO2 uptake. So essentially how much oxygen you're using at a certain pace. And, we're usually cross-testing between shoes and things like that. And obviously the less oxygen you use in a shoe, the more efficient you are, the better. And then the second metric that we're often looking at is your peak force. And so if you can have a lower peak force over the distance of a marathon, that means less pounding, right? And not as much beat up of the legs. And so both of those metrics were lower, lower VO2 uptake and lower peak force. And so more efficient, less pounding. And that's a really, really good sign. And, I do believe that we are in an age of super shoe era where things are very marginal, right? But they do make a difference as an elite athlete. And so I will say most, nearly every brand across the board, has closed this gap of what used to be this chasm between the original super shoe and all these A-type trainers that were beforehand. But it was really cool to see the data and like I said, also the stability that came with my ankle. And then I think one of the more exciting things too that I noticed was, Brooks shoes are about 50 grams heavier than what I'm used to. And that 50 grams can make a difference over the length of a marathon. But what that really does show me is the potential of what the shoe can be. And so looking beyond, and I've had little glimpses and teases, but looking beyond of what the Hyperion Elite can be as it's continued to be stripped down and become a lighter shoe with the same geometry and foam and things that already make it great, just give it a high amount of potential. And that's really exciting to me too, that there's room to grow, even with it being as efficient as it is right now.
You can't just rip out the tongues like CJ does?
No. Does he do that?
Yeah, I think he in one iteration of the Hyperion Elite, he would run Boston without the tongues of his shoes. And yeah, so he had his own little sort of mini alterations to the Hyperions. But yeah, you'd have to look and see or ask him just to see how he's been able to cut weight off the shoes here or there. But no, I mean it's fascinating. So I think I think it was Sinclair Johnson on the Alley on the Run show talked about how she didn't really test the Hoka shoes all too much before she made the switch, because I think she had signed by the time for January to roll around, and so it's kind of right into it. So she left Craig Nowak her fiance to do a lot of the testing of the product for her. With you, I guess contract ends with ASICS end of 2025. Now we're speaking in March. So for these last couple months, have you been able to be a little bit more of a free agent and test a variety of different brands before you ultimately started to lean more towards like, all right, I'm going to put some more time into Brooks?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a little bit tricky, like, because, I was going through this injury and so testing was a little bit tricky through at least January. But it was interesting as well, like, because I am such I don't know, an open athlete, and the docuseries and other things, and we have so much media that's either shooting Kenneth or Connor or the Run Elite program, Casey.
Let me tell you, I watched the latest Run Elite program reel, and you were wearing all black head to toe, and I was like, oh, something's up here.
Yeah, I've had to kind of fly a little bit incognito. Like, there's been days where I've had to wear full on ASICs simply to keep the story under wraps, and
Right.
those have been open conversations that I've had with Brooks, simply because it's like, yeah, we wanted this announcement to be big, and we wanted it to be a surprise, and so they've been really supportive of that. So like through the week, like Monday through Friday, I'm able, like those that are close to me, those that are in my circle, of course they know about this negotiation, and we've been able to keep it tight there. But like, yeah, showing up to these Saturday long runs where there's anywhere from 50, I don't know, 30 to 50 people, it's like, okay, I can't keep everybody on
That
either.
person's likely posting anonymously on Let's Run
Yeah,
if
oh
I'm
my God.
showing up in something else. Yeah.
So I've had to kind of be a little bit selective sometimes on what I wear. But yeah, it's been fun to get to test the whole Brooks lineup, and like find my favorites and find what I love, and also be able to find things where it's like, oh man, I'm so excited to give feedback on this shoe to the Brooks team that I know is going to listen and make changes from all the knowledge that I've gained as a pro over the years, and what I love, what I don't love, and yeah, it's been difficult. I'm not gonna lie, kind of playing this halvesy game, but yeah, it's been fun. Like I said, to get to know people, get to know relationships, and to test new stuff.
Closing the chapter on ASICS.
Yeah,
So 7 years, making your first Olympic team. What really stands out to you is just sort of like one of the highlights of the time with the brand, because and like what do you think you'll miss the most? Because I even just sort of think to like, yeah, sure, you popped off in 2022, 23, and then of course 24, 25, but really, I mean, they stood with you in the throes of injury.
yeah,
And I mean, there would be times probably where some of the brands would probably be like, all right, we're just going to reduce or drop this guy. And you managed to really turn it around to a point where you had a ton of value coming out of this contract.
yeah, yeah. It has been cool to like see the journey that they've been with me, and I'll forever be grateful for that. It is interesting that like contracts usually scale with performance, and so I do think I did provide the value that I was being paid when I wasn't performing, if that makes sense, and I more than provided value to the contract on the years that I was performing well, if that makes sense. And um, but yeah, I think when I think about the best year with ASICS, it was definitely 2024, making that first Olympic team. You know, and the support, taking me to Paris to tour the Olympic marathon course in April, and to get to know Paris, and that was my first international trip ever in my life. And so getting to know Paris early on, so that way when I went there for the Olympic Games, it could be all business, and I could know the course. That support was really special, and then I guess more than anything, I think the thing that will probably stand out the most is just the relationships that I built with the ASICS people. I think of Kodama and Tsubaki, and I think of Ben, and I think of Kat and Karen and Mac and Brian, and I really pride myself in my ability, not pride, I don't know, like I feel like I really took the effort to get to know the brand that was behind me, and that's going to be the hardest to leave for sure. And also probably the fellow ASICS athletes that I have. You know, I'm going to see those athletes probably for the rest of my career and things, but like I think of even the athletes that are near to me, like McKenna Myler, and of course I'll continue to see her. But you know, there's something special about wearing the same kit on the start line, or even someone like John Career. Like I got to know John Career really, really well over the last couple of years, from when he first, you know, was at Falmouth all the way until he won Boston and Chicago, and like I hope we can continue to have those relationships, because that's really, I think, what I valued most in these brands.
Yeah. Plus, you've got a whole nother deep roster of really talented folks to get to know and call teammates.
Yeah, yeah. I will
So
say I'm really excited to work with Creed Thompson and Casey Klinger, like those guys that are obviously in my training group, and then get to know the rest, like CJ Albertson and Jess McLean and the whole Brooks Beast team, and yeah, there's some great people that are part of Brooks.
coming out of this contract, you are 32 years old. I'm not calling you old because you're only 2 weeks older than me. And you made one Olympic team. Next go around is now 2 years away. Where did you see sort of and assess the value of Clayton Young, the athlete that you were shopping around, and what was important to structure this contract? Because presumably it could be the last one of your career.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like to imagine, you know, Connor Manson and I have this dream all the time, and we're like, okay, Brisbane, like Brisbane. And in fact, Mans thinks one Olympic cycle further, but he's like, we're going to Brisbane, Australia, like, and I think that mentality is super important as an athlete. Like I look at the Sarah Halls of the world, right? You know, or the Eliud Kipchoge's of the world, like, you got to have that mentality starting now in order to go the distance. But yeah, of course I'm going to be fighting age. So yeah, what does that mean for this contract? Well, this is the most important contract of my career, by far. And so there was an extra weight about getting these next 3 or 4 years right, because there's no guarantee of the future. And yeah, so it was really cool though to be able to approach every brand that I approach. You know, what was really neat is even brands that weren't necessarily in a position to support me as an athlete were still willing to like get on the phone or get on a call and just talk to me because of the credentials that I have as an athlete, as an Olympian, as, you know, top 10 in the world championships. And that was really special. And, you know, it was really cool to get, you know, like I said, to build these relationships that I know will happen in the future. But yeah, this contract was really important to get right, because I think it really hinges on whether I make, you know, it's cool to be an Olympian, but, you know, Coach Eystone was a 2-time Olympian, and he set the bar. And so multi Olympian is, I think, has always been the goal. And that is like the dream of mine, right? And to perform better than we did. And, you know, Connor and I had big goals for LA. And yeah, it was also really neat to see, like, people obviously value me for my performance, and that's the thing that I have going for me the most, my consistency, my performance. But like I said, everything else that I've been able to build from a brand standpoint, and see how that, you know, some brands recognize that and some brands don't. And it's sometimes shocking to see when people don't, but I understand as well. Like some brands just want you for your performance, and some want you for more than that.
Yeah, your YouTube subscribers will probably want to know, without getting into too many sort of specifics, but was sort of highlighting the content creator side of Clayton, something within the Brooks contract that you were just like, yeah, no, I would love to have that support, because now everyone's become accustomed to the Clayton Young build-up the build series into these marathons that you're running. And sometimes in the past, you've had to go and scramble to, hey, who are we going to get on the hook for this New York series? Who are we going to get for this Boston series? And was it something in this process that you're like, hey, would love to have Brooks across multiple of these down the road? Or just so you know, these will continue to happen. So was that something important for you?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I'll always be grateful for ASICS and supporting the first docuseries, but you're right. Like ever since then, um, I've had to work with different sponsors, and that's a lot of negotiation and a lot of time. And in a way, it's a good thing because it does validate my brand with being able to continue to work with different sponsors. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's nice just to like have consistency and to for me not to carry that load as much. And you know, I what was amazing about this process when working with Brooks is, like I said, I presented to them who Clayton Young was, and they listened. And I didn't even have to necessarily ask for it. It was something that they were interested in, um, and so yeah, they will be part of the docuseries to some degree moving forward. And there still are like checks and balances in that for sure, right? And I still have to do proposals and things like that to them. But it was something that they were very excited about, and it is something that they saw value in, and so hopefully that will, you know, help it so that the fans get more content, and it can and be more consistent, and be something that can be really, really great for both Brooks and highlighting what they've done. But I'm really grateful for them and listening through that process.
It's an athlete preference thing, whether they choose to go with an agent and or choose to represent themselves. And you're one of the few, I think, at your level who has chosen to, after a while, represent yourself. What was the biggest thing you learned about the industry, or that like your eyes opened up when it came to these contract negotiations?
Yeah, I don't know if I completely understood what I was getting into when I decided to represent myself. But I wouldn't go back. I completely stand by my decision, and I'm really grateful. Um, Ultimately, the reason I decided to represent myself, it's interesting, the podcast about relationships, but it was because I wanted to develop relationships with the brands that I was representing. Like if I could understand, like I said, what they valued, and they could understand what I valued, it would just be a win-win, right? And um, ultimately, I found through the docuseries actually that the best way for a brand to understand who I was for me to paint the picture. Like no one's gonna hustle or care as much as you do, and no one's gonna understand you as much as you do. And so being able to like present, the best picture in front of a brand, and understand what they value has been really, really rewarding. Um, but yeah, it definitely comes with highs and lows, and tough conversations. And sometimes I have to be like, okay, you're talking to Clayton the athlete, and here you're talking to Clayton the agent, and we joke about that. But I've found that because I'm such an open and honest and straightforward person in terms of how I communicate, um, like as soon as I can be open and honest, like the brands are like, oh, okay, like we could shoot back and be open and honest with Clayton, and he's not going to get offended by it. And ultimately, that's when yeah, synergy is born, right? And teamwork, and building a brand, and I love that. But yeah, it's not for everyone, that's for sure, and it comes with its highs and lows for sure.
At any point in this process, did Clayton the agent wear a suit to any meeting?
No suits. That's not a bad idea though.
Collared shirt, at least?
Yeah. Yeah. Nah.
Or like maybe a
Yeah.
loose polo? Yeah.
Yeah. At least polo, maybe. It isn't like it. They know me as the athlete, and so it is interesting. Like, yeah, the athlete gets me in the door, and then they get to understand who Clayton, the businessman, is. And yeah, there definitely were a few times where I almost wanted to like call an audible and be like, hey, will you just please talk to, Jared Ward, right?
Yeah.
Like he'll represent me today or something like that. Like, because there are tough conversations, and yeah, there's big conversations with my wife Ashley as we went through this decision. Um, that's not easy, but yeah, maybe the suit would help next time.
Who's on the Clayton Young board of directors of sorts?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the board of directors, Garrett Heath has heard a lot about the Clayton Young board of directors as I've gone through this decision-making process. But yeah, Ashley for sure is on the agent. Should we call her Agent Zero?
Okay.
Yeah, she's on the board of directors. And then Jared Ward is next, followed by Todd Garner, who's a good friend and is actually now an agent as well. he doesn't represent me, but we talk all the time about, you know, negotiating and how to, you know, he helps me and I help him, and as we kind of soundboard. And then of course, Coach Eyestone, and Connor Mance. Like that's pretty much the board of directors. And occasionally I'll talk to my parents. It can be tricky. You know, there's so much context that goes into understanding this small world of running, that keeping them up to speed can be tough. But that's the Clayton Young board of directors, and the Lord. I'll say that too.
Yeah. Would you go through this again? I think you've said it before. Like,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It was very difficult, and it was surprising in some ways, but yeah, I think it was the right choice, and it's definitely no, it's not. I think it's the right choice. It is the right choice. I needed to be very confident in this decision, and this idea of representing myself and representing Brooks, and yeah, I'm very confident in this, and I would do it again. Like I think I needed to understand all these nuances of working with brands and even myself, and to have, you know, there's something that's special knowing that, you know, I've made a choice and I can have that confidence going into LA 2028. Like it's like, this is what I've chosen. This is what I'm going to do. I have a plan. Brooks has a plan. We're going to execute this plan, and it's the best plan that I know to get me to be on the U.S. Olympic team.
No, I mean it's. I feel like every pro athlete dreams of like, I'm gonna wear one uniform the rest of my career from the moment I turn pro, and I'm gonna be with one coach, one training group the whole entire time, and that's my key to success. It's like, well, only Derek Jeter and the New York Yankees gets to experience something like that. But it can also be the flip side of things, a total refresh of like, hey, this is going to be the first time I'm racing in a Brooks kit. That's going to probably feel exhilarating to you. Or the first, you know, big long run that you're going to crush in the Hyperion Elite 6 or a future prototype. And I feel like that kind of, you know, keeps things fresh and new, whereas like it could have just always been like, well, all right, this is going to be my 20th build rotating through the same, you know, iteration of shoes. But yeah, no, that you've got plenty to be excited about. So where are we at in terms of Boston training?
Oh man, yeah, Boston. I'm excited for Boston. It's going to be a little bit of a unique experience. I mean, if you followed me in my journey, like usually a marathon build is 16, 20 weeks, you know, long build, fitness comes, but I've got time. But this is a very unique experience, right? I got injured in October. I was injured for 18 weeks, and I went through 6 to 8 injury cycles, and that left only like 9, 10 weeks to build to Boston. And you know, that's insane to think, to go from like almost little to nothing for 18 weeks, and then just to try to send it for Boston. And so I'm trying to approach it with a very curious mentality, and it's been amazing to see how my body has responded. You know, it has been quick. Like I think I went from like 50 miles to 80 miles to 90 miles to 100 miles to 110 to last week I hit 128, and you know we got 6 weeks to go, and it's really fascinating too from like a mentality standpoint, knowing that we're 6 weeks out, and usually in a marathon build, this is when everything would be like humming, and I feel like I could just destroy workouts, and I feel invincible, and like I'm feeling confident, and I'm committed in the sense that I'm like doing all the little things. Well, right now, like I'm doing all the little things. I'm more committed than ever. It seems like I'm doing more than the little things because I know I have to. You have to be careful here, but try to make up ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll get into a workout and I'll be like, oh yeah, like I'm not fit yet. Like this is really hard. And so like the mind is not always in sync with the body. I'm still, you know, it's still trying to respond to all this high mileage and getting back to running and getting fit again. But I think it's been really satisfying to see the fitness come, right? It's like it's it's like by the mile, by the hour, by the minute. It seems like my body's adapting, which is really, really satisfying after 18 weeks of just depression and nothing.
Yeah, you wrote on Instagram February 21st, 109 days injured, 7 doctors, 56 treadmill sessions, 23 test runs, 60 cross-training sessions, millions of data points, countless prayers, and then you finally broke 100 miles that particular week for the first time in 18 weeks. And then you're like, does that mean I'm no longer injured? So at this point, I guess, like, when did you start to turn the corner, you would say? Was it that in the lead up to that?
Yeah, it was.
And I guess, like, let's refresh the folks. Like, the injury was, I have it right here because you specified what it was. It was, on this Instagram post, you said it was posterior tibia tendinosis and arthritis. That's
Yeah, it's essentially what I've since learned. And that was probably, I don't know when that was maybe like halfway through this injury cycle, and I've learned more since then. Yeah, the simple version is ankle pain.
Mm-hmm.
The
And
more
this all
complex,
stems from rolling your ankle in that one workout?
uh, it goes back a ways.
Okay.
So you could say in 2017 is when I first started kind of experiencing this foot pain. And, I'd kind of always manage it, deal with it, whatever. Didn't really think anything of it. We think that not at the World Championships, but 4 weeks before the World Championships, I rolled my ankle really, really bad, and on both sides. And luckily was able to get healthy and rehab and compete at World Championships. But then as I started building for Valencia, the goal was always, I would run the World Championships, Connor would set the American record in Chicago, and then I would set it in Valencia. That was the plan. But in October, I finished a workout, and I was prototyping some shoes, and I finished on and went on the cool down, and like my ankle was just mad. Like the support wasn't quite there, and probably from this 2017 years going on, and so ultimately this arthritis is between my talar navicular joint, and so that talar navicular joint would just swell up like crazy. And I think then what would happen is I would start to compensate with my posterior tibia tendon, and that's where that would flare up as well. And so it was all manifesting on this posterior tibia tendon, but really the problem was the talar navicular joint and this arthritis within it, and these holes essentially in that joint. So yeah, we saw a lot of doctors, we did a lot of things, flew out to California, flew out to Colorado, did everything you could think of.
How close were you to surgery?
Yeah, well, that's where I finally started talking with the USOPC doctor, and he brought up a picture of my ankle, an MRI picture, and he's like, look at this right here, look at this spot. And I think we'll put it in the docuseries if you want to see the picture, but he's like, this spot right here is your problem, and it's really mad, and it's been there for a long time, and it's not going away, and you're going to have this the rest of your life. And he was just like really frank with me. He's like, and it seems like you've been doing everything you've supposed to be doing the last 12 to 16 weeks. And so he's like, at this point, I think you should talk to this surgeon at the Stedman Clinic. And when he said Stedman Clinic, my eyes kind of got wide, because I knew that Kira D'Amato just went to the Stedman Clinic, and she's just
on
got
crutches now, and you're like, I don't want that.
And I'm like, oh gosh, like I love that this is maybe the best place to go, but also I'm like, I know this is a big deal. And so he's like, let me put you in touch with, this surgeon. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, dang, like this might be it. Like, and I'm in the middle of contract negotiations, and I'm like, gosh, this is not good. And so eventually from this picture that he showed me, it was really fascinating. We'd been playing with insoles, we'd been playing with wedges to help with my pronation and things like that. And I honestly had this like moment of inspiration, and I'm a, I don't know, I'm a God fearing man that believes in revelation, but it was honestly this moment in my mind where it's like, well, what if I moved this wedge from this part of my foot to this part of my foot, so that way it would open up the talonavicular joint, those two bones wouldn't hit, and maybe that would, you know, provide some relief. And so I moved this wedge, and I hop on the treadmill. I've been doing a lot of treadmill runs because I can stop anytime. And I run 10 miles straight, no pain. And I'm like, what the? I'm like shocked. I'm like, what just happened? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, moving this dumb little wedge in my insole is going to solve this problem. And I didn't get too excited too soon. 2 days later, hop on the treadmill, 10 more miles, no pain. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I get on the phone with the surgeon because I have this scheduled call. And he's like, hey, so I hear you might want to get surgery. I'm like, well, I just barely may have figured this out. And he's like, well, tell me about it. So I tell him about it. And he's like, well, look, if you get surgery, it's 5 months at least before you're back running. And so he's like, if this is working, like, by all means, like, you figure this out. Like, you go down this path as far as you can, and then you give me a call back. And I was like, okay. And, I hung up the phone, and I haven't called him back since. And it's like, it was, and from there we went, like I said, 50 miles, 80 miles, 90, 100, and now I'm running, and it's been amazing. Like, there are some very specific exercises that I still do with an access board, and I still have that wedge in my shoe. Um, but like, my ankle's 90, 95%, and it's been amazing. So and with that comes like this deep, like, yeah, just so grateful. Way better than 5 months. And um, yeah, I mean, it means that my build to Boston is super short, but man, I'm hungry. And I was joking with Coach Eystone the other day, like, if I pull this off and I, even perform relatively well to last year, or where I should be, like, or what, let's say I knock it out of the park, right? Let's say I get on the podium, I don't know, whatever. Does that mean that our builds from now on are only 8 to 10 weeks? And it was just kind of like, I don't know. That I'm a very merit-based person, so I don't know if that would ever happen. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of been exciting to be curious and see what happens.
What a roll of the dice to just, I guess, like, kudos and props to you for, like, just testing out this wedge that all of a sudden, has changed things. Is there a way to track the extent of the injury, whether it's making any sort of healing progress, or is it, because you said it's been around since 2017, like, you're going to live with this, but is there a way to track that it's not getting worse, but only, like, healing to an extent?
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't done any more imaging, and so it would be
Okay.
interesting. Like, I did get a PRP shot 2 or 3 weeks before this phone call, and it would be interesting to see some of the healing maybe from that PRP shot and some really intense shockwave. Uh, Stupid expensive, but I think that may have contributed to some of the healing as well. Um, but yeah, the other thing that we've been really using as well is Stride. Like, luckily, I've been wearing the Stride pods since before the Olympic Games, and so I have this really, really strong baseline of what my biomechanics are like and what my fitness is like. And so now we're able to compare data like pre-injury and post-injury, and that's been really cool to follow. I always looked at Stride from like a performance and a race performance standpoint of what it could do to elevate, me as an athlete. But now it's kind of coming in clutch with this whole injury side of things, and we're continuing to dive into that data. I mean, there's just so much data that goes into that, and luckily that's what I love. I'm a nerd, right? And um, but like simple things like the left-right balance and the ground contact time between my left foot and my right foot, and how that was essentially pre-injury and currently, and how that's trending back to my pre-Olympic days or my pre-world champ days, or my hamstring. And that's what's been really interesting too, is like, because I took 18 weeks off, like, a lot of these other injuries that were maybe little niggles have uh, have not been a problem, right? So it maybe gave my body the reset and the rest it needed, especially as we start to kind of grind now and in through the Olympic cycle to the Olympic Games. So
So
maybe
to
it's
go
all
back a couple
right.
months to, the original plan being like, we're going to go to Valencia, we're going to break the American record. So where did you sort of land and feel after seeing 204.43 like
Uh,
by Connor? That's the mark now.
yeah,
And your PB, scrolling back over to last year's Boston results, is 207.04. So it's still a chunk of time,
yeah,
but the sense of belief, I guess, you drew that from workouts and progress in the fall before disaster struck.
yeah. I mean, it's like if Connor can do it, why not me, right? It's
Yeah.
like, uh, um, and there's also like, yeah, don't get me wrong, 204 is fast. And I remember when he broke it, I was like, ooh, that's like, this is going to be a tall ask, but it was still like, it was still tangible. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's still in the realm. Like if he was low 204 or 203, I maybe would have been like, okay, like maybe time to reevaluate, maybe just run fast in Valencia and be, you know, second best American. But it was enough, but it wasn't too much to where I was like, this is not impossible. And so I think it will take some time for me to get my confidence back to take another crack at the American record. Uh, like I said, I'm only 4 weeks deep in, 5 weeks deep, and it's coming and it's coming quick, but it will take some time. And um, yeah, so I don't know when that'll be. Like I think people are asking me to go after it this fall, and but there's also this whole timing of the Olympic cycle too, all right? Like, so
Right.
when is the Olympic standard going to come out? It's probably going to be somewhere around 206.30. We want to unlock spots if it's the same model as last year, and that was a nightmare. Not last year, last Olympic cycle. And so, picking and choosing when you run fast with this timing can be kind of tricky.
Um, what have you made of just sort of the next wave of American marathoners, right? Like in training, you got to see, Casey Klinger making all this progress. Kind of like, all right, let's brush off the first go round. This was like the debut, I think, that people expected when they thought, oh, he's going to take to the marathon. He runs 208.43 in Tokyo, but even before that, Ethan Schuley, like your former teammate,
Yeah,
out of nowhere going out and running 207.14 also in Japan. And I guess, like, yeah, I mean, he's just behind you, I guess, on the all-time list if we're counting all the courses. Um, and it just kind of goes to show that the tide turns so quick in the marathon.
totally. Yeah, it's there's there's nothing worse than like being injured and not being able to train and like seeing these results and seeing the next generation and being like, oh man, like, yeah,
Because you being the marathoner that you've been the last 2 years, like, you got a target on your back.
yes, yeah, yeah. What, Eric Jenkins, like, do I have a shot? Like,
Oh, now you always do,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, I totally have a target, and that's exciting. Like, it is kind of cool to be labeled as such. But yeah, the next generation is coming, and they're learning and learning quick, and I think there's just so much more knowledge out there that that Connor and I have even shared, right? And so they're learning from us and they're learning from the best around the world because there is so much knowledge. And I think ultimately, like, um, there's going to be, I'm going to have to mentally approach it the right way. Like, right. Like uh, there's got to be an abundant mentality. Like they can run fast and I can run fast too. But in championship style racing at the Olympic trials, like bring it on. Like I'm gonna be in my element. Like that's what I do. And it's not all about times and about running fast. It's about being the top three on the day. And like that's the kind of mentality that I need to start working on now, so that way I can clutch up and do what I need to do, and ultimately do what I need to do in LA. And don't get me wrong, I'm super excited. Like no one was more excited for Casey Klinger than me. Like especially knowing that he was going to be my Brooks teammate. But I've been friends and teammates with him since American Fork, right? We built American Fork, we built BYU, we built this last chapter, and now we're building this Brooks chapter. And it's like I'm really excited for that. And of course, Ethan, like I've known him for a long time, and I'm really good friends with his family. And like I still remember the day when his dad reached out to me and he's like, how fast would Ethan need to run to get a contract? And he's like, would 210 do it? And I was like, oh man, 210's tight. Like I don't know if that's gonna cut it. And so to see Ethan like chip away, chip away, chip away, and to finally do it, and his dad just be so excited and so proud, like that brings me a lot of joy. And I think I'm starting to kind of adopt this mentality that Jared Ward has. Like, I think something that was really special was in the build to the Olympic trials and at the Olympic trials, I think no one was more proud and more excited for Connor and I than Jared. Yeah, like finishing that race and him being there and looking him in the eyes and just knowing his pure joy, not an ounce of resentment for Connor and I, was amazing. And I'm starting to experience that with athletes like Casey and Creed and these younger guys, and it's really special. But they're gonna have to fight to knock me off the top three. I will say that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like you made a hard team in 2024.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at this list now, it's like, okay, by then, Zuhair Talbi will be able to compete at the trials. Wesley Career, Charles Hicks.
Yeah.
Grant Fisher's now teasing the idea.
Totally.
This is going to be the hardest U.S. men's marathon team to make in history. And one, for the fans, it's not too early to start to get excited about it and start, the speculation and the hot takes on who your top three are as of March 2026. But for you as a competitor, I'm sure it's also like a lot but you're like, I'm just trying to get ready for Boston right now.
Yeah. No, I think you almost quoted exactly. I was telling that Connor the other day, like, wow, we thought 2024 was hard. Like 2028 is going to be a whole different beast. But it's amazing. Like, yeah, we thought the last 4 miles of the Olympic trials was going to be a dogfight, and it separated, and the people that were supposed to make the team did, and people will self-select in some degree, but yeah, it's daunting to think about. Even like you said, the new international athletes that are now U.S. athletes, like the Zuhairs and the Wesley Kiptus, and then the Charles Hicks, and who knows, the Cole Sprouts, right? Like, yeah. There's some young guys that, and I think about this too. Like, nobody thought I had a shot when I ran 208 flat, or before I ran 208 flat, right? Like, I came out of nowhere, and if I could come out of nowhere, that just means that somebody else can come out of nowhere and surprise, the Clayton Youngs and the Connor Mances of the world, just like we surprised, the Galen Rupps of the world, right? And so yeah, there's this mentality that you can have that's really fear-based, but really it's just, I think this is where something that Connor is really, really good at. It's like, it's not me versus the U.S., it's me versus the world, right? It's me versus the podium at Boston, right? Like, that's where we're shooting for. And if we can keep our eyes forward and focused without getting too worried about the up-and-coming generation, I think that's our best chance of success. And so I'm just going to, keep that mentality. And luckily, at each one of these world major marathons, we get to practice that. Like, it's not about being top American. It's about putting ourselves up as high as possible against the world and getting that race experience. That's what Boston's going to be like.
One of the best things from our pre-Boston podcast last year was you kind of shed some light to the way some of these major contracts can get structured is like, how much of a bet are you willing to make on yourself? And you talked about like, I'm feeling great. Like, I'll shoot for the higher place with the less guaranteed money or whatever it was. And so now, and you ended up 7th in a fast time that I'm sure you're like, made the right choice. Like, I, checked the box. That was awesome. Now this time around, coming off the injury and with the bar being really high coming off of 2025, how did you play your negotiations for this race?
Yeah, I mean, these negotiations happened so far in advance that this was like pre-injury that I'd even, begun and I think even finalized conversations with Boston. And it was like, oh, I'm injured right now, maybe early in my injury. It's like, this is going to last, a couple weeks. And I'll be ready for Boston for sure. Like, it never was really a big concern. But yeah, there is risk for sure in the contract. Like, there's usually a cutoff for place, there's a cutoff for time, there's a cutoff for finishing, and there's a cutoff for starting. Yeah, you could leave a lot of money on the table if you don't perform. Um, that being said, like, and it is a little bit risky too. Like, you also want to be careful not to, show up just for a paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
because that may reflect badly on your negotiations for the fall with other race directors. Like, you don't want to be that guy. And, I do pride myself in being incredibly consistent. Valencia was the first marathon that I've had to pull out of, I think, ever. And, it was already a tall ask with 3 marathons in a year, but you can't do that too often, or you can't just show up and like, oh, I'm going to finish the marathon and collect my appearance and call it good, even though it might be reduced. And so I am a little bit cautious about that. And so like the only way through is like forward. Like, it's like, no, I'm going to give it my all. And um, there's risk in stating that.
Mm-hmm.
I could hide behind injury and contract negotiations and being sick and life, but that's just not. I'm not in it for that. And yeah, there's something that's really special too, about this Brooks contract as well, that gives me the freedom, just like almost like Boston last year, where I can send it. It's all upside. It's all gravy. It's all bonus. It's all like, let's see what we can do. And I think the last thing I'll say even about Boston is, and I've kind of been playing with this idea especially when I first started getting back into shape, like, okay, I need to make this decision if I'm going to run Boston or not still. But when I think about my career and I think back to like Des Linden's career or Meb Keflezighi's career, and how many times they took a swing at the ball at Boston, um, every experience at Boston is valuable. I've only raced it once. It was my debut last year. I took 7th. That's pretty cool. And I believe probably more than anybody that anything can happen at Boston, because I've done my research and looked at those that have won in the past. And I feel like I'm one of those athletes that, that I can, Meb won on a year when he wasn't expecting to. He was almost his least fit, and same with Des. And so anybody can win at Boston, and that mentality is really important. And I think also this idea that, I think the odds of me winning Boston are not very high, and the odds of me podium or being top 5 are not very high, but I think that the value in taking a swing at the ball for future years, gaining that experience, not only for future Bostons but future marathons, is just far too valuable. And if I go in undercooked, that's okay, right? This might be the first marathon ever that I've had, besides maybe my debut, that I've been undercooked for a marathon, and I'm excited and curious to see how that goes. And that's the kind of mentality that I'm embracing.
I'm playing through that scenario in my head of you trying to pull a Meb and going at mile 8. You think Connor lets you go? I don't think so.
I know, it's funny. We've joked about this many a time. Like, okay, if Connor sends it, do I go straight to the front and like pump the brakes and pump the brakes and pump, like, front, pump the brakes, front, pump the brakes? Like,
Very Mo Farah-esque, yeah.
Yeah, like, um, no, I don't think he does. I don't think he does. And that just speaks to who Connor is, right? One of the beauties about training together is, like, I think one of the best examples in New York of 2025, when I caught him with like 3-4 miles to go. He had fallen off from the pack, and I caught him, and it woke him up. Like, he took off like a rocket, and he had the fastest last 2 miles of anybody in the field. And so there is something about, me that fires him up, that gets him going. And so I think if I took off, I don't know, maybe he'd let me go, but
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be for long.
All right, so we're a little over a month out from Boston. At this moment, what would define success there?
Oh, yeah, the definition of success is a tough one. Um, yeah, I mean, the easy answer would be, oh yeah, you know, you get to the start line healthy, you run as fast as you can, you do your best, um, and yeah, that is like anybody that's looked at my last 4 months would say that's success, um, because of what I've been through. Uh, but also, if you know me, you know that like that doesn't cut it, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that doesn't cut it, and it would be hard to walk away disappointed. It'd be easy to walk away disappointed. If I don't know, like I'm one that loves momentum. I love knowing like, oh, I took seventh last year. I've only taken seventh in world major marathons, essentially, and so like being better than seventh would be really cool, right? I was seventh in Chicago. I was seventh in Boston. I was seventh in New York. Like, let's break seventh, right?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
start there.
They should give you
Last
bib
year.
number 7 this year. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Well, maybe I will. Well, no, I won't, based off of seat time. But if they did it off place, yeah. But yeah, I think success would be, like I said even before, like I think you've got to keep your mind open when it comes to approaching these races like Boston. And so, yeah, for sure. Like there's always that slim, there's a chance I win. There's a chance I'm podium. There's a chance I'm top 5. There's a chance I'm 7th. There's a chance that I break top 10. I think that's where, like, that would be kind of the hopeful, where I'm at. Like if I could still be top 10, I think I'd be really happy given what I've gone through. But at the same time, like I know I've been through a lot, but I'm not going to let myself slip lower than that. Like I've got to keep, like I said, I've got to keep the mind forward, and um, I, yeah, I think that's what success would look like.
Well, Clayton, we are rooting for you, and I'm excited that the docu-series is also coming back for this build-up, and so we'll get a closer glimpse of all of the training that it takes to get to that starting line, and then, of course, how much clearer, I guess, like that goal gets as the race draws nearer. So always
Yeah,
appreciate you taking the time for this, and I'm sure we'll catch up in Boston.
appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for asking the good questions, and thanks for having me.